Record. Hey everyone, welcome. This is our live chat that we have with the featured Dr. Chelsea Karwath. We're so excited to have her. I've known her for several years now, and I've watched her kind of grow through her practice and through her career. So I'm really excited to kind of pick her brain a little bit more and kind of see what she can provide with us for resources to continue to help us throughout this group and kind of help us with our overall health. So if you are joining us live, welcome. If you have any questions, you can save them to the end. Just ask if you mute yourself so we don't have any background noise, but please ask questions if you come on live. If you are catching the recording, then that's great too. You can save it for a really great resource and then look at the other resources that we have later on in the day. So Chelsea, welcome. You are joining us from St. Louis, right?
Yes.
Well, how long have you lived in St. Louis?
We have lived here a little over 2 years. So I got married September of 2018, and that's when we moved to St. Louis.
Wow. So I wanted you to share a little bit about like what you're doing in St. Louis right now, what your schooling's been like, a little bit about like what you're doing, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm actually about a little over 2 weeks shy of graduating with my doctorate of chiropractic from Logan University here in St. Louis. I'm actually from about an hour west of St. Louis, so I'm familiar with the area. And my school is in Chesterfield, Missouri, but I didn't actually know that it was a chiropractic school until I was kind of already starting my undergrad. Didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I always liked nutrition. I was always super into alternative health and making my own deodorant and all that kind of fun stuff, and just not really knowing where that was going to lead me. And I kind of stumbled upon chiropractic. I had never been to a chiropractor when I decided to go to school. Fun fact. But the more I read and understood about what chiropractors do, I just loved the foundation of chiropractic, which is a holistic view of, we look at the whole body. We talk about the nervous system, which controls everything else in the body. So that's kind of why I decided to go into the field of chiropractic. And then kind of along that journey, I also got certified in acupuncture. So I do a lot of acupuncture now, which I love acupuncture. It's become one of my favorite techniques. And then I'm also getting certified in functional medicine through the Institute for Functional Medicine. And I should have that certification finished probably about another year. COVID has really interrupted all that stuff, but I'm about halfway through and it's taken me a year. So I'm thinking hopefully next year I'll have that finished up, and then I graduate in December.
Wow, that's
as a chiropractor.
Exciting. Yeah, that's very exciting. I feel like I've watched you start your freshman year of college and undergrad and kind of like watched you go through all of this. So it's like, it's really cool to kind of end up on the other side of it. But
almost there. There's a light at the end of the
you can do it. You're almost
been
there.
in school the whole time.
Like the longest year ever, I'm sure, to be in school too.
It is for sure.
Learning and things like that are happening.
Yeah. So. Oh, I forgot to mention my internship, which is what I'm doing now. So I'm finishing up my preceptorship is our version of an internship. So I'm working at an integrative, we call it a functional chiropractic clinic, just outside of St. Louis. We do functional medicine consults, we do acupuncture, chiropractic, of course, and then we just started a therapy called neurofeedback, which is kind of based on brainwave function and retraining the brain and all that good jazz. So I'm getting to see a lot of different things in this clinic, and that's what I'm doing now. So I do a lot of the acupuncture and chiropractic mainly is what I do.
That's really cool. And I want to like get into the neurofeedback because my husband and I, when we visited you in St. Louis, you really kind of we talked a lot about like the neurofeedback and what you're doing right now in your internship, which sounded awesome. And I think that would be helpful. But for like some people that might not know, we're throwing a lot of terms out there that I feel like a lot of people might not know, like functional med, integrative medicine, or integrative approaches, holistic. Can you try to like identify or define those a little bit for people that might not know the differences?
Yes, and thank you for saying that because I have to kind of retrain myself now that I'm actually in the clinical world and I'm not just like surrounded by my same chiro people all the time. So I forget people don't know all these terms. So functional medicine is basically the study of the body as a whole system approach or a systems based approach. So we think of the whole system. We think of the hormone system and how it impacts gut health and how that impacts the neurological system and the skin. And just we think of the body as a whole being instead of just focusing on one system, which a lot of medical doctors are focused on. Their kind of specialty is one system of the body. So functional medicine is kind of the whole body and how it functions as a whole. And that ties in really well with chiropractic because we already have that foundation of seeing the body as it works as a whole, seeing it from a neurological perspective and how the structure of the body ties into the visceral components and all that stuff. So yeah, that's functional medicine in a nutshell.
Very cool. Yeah. And it's different from medical because it's looking at the whole person, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times, like when I have clients coming in and we're going through symptoms of mental health and wellness, and a lot of the times I'm like, I really encourage you to see a functional medicine. Most of the people have no idea what I'm talking about. So it really is kind of like this idea of treating the whole you, getting to the root cause of things, and kind of maybe spending a little bit more time on what is the root cause of whatever's going on rather than treating the symptoms as they come. So
Right.
I think it's a really good approach. My practice is integrative life counseling, which is somewhat similar, integrating different approaches, treat the whole person. And then of course we have the holistic, which is like holistic approach. So but yeah, so that's what I'm excited to talk a little bit more about today, because I think it is important to address mental health on more of like a let's look at the whole picture type of thing for mental health.
Definitely.
So yeah, so I want to get back to neurofeedback, but I want to first talk about how could you tell us a little bit about the impact of our physical health and wellness and how that might impact our mental health and emotional health?
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, my training is in kind of more of a neuro-based view of the body because of chiropractic. So, thinking neurologically is always something that we're doing, but also it's important to pay attention to the systems of the body. So, a huge one for mood and mental health is going to be the gut, believe it or not. I know a lot of people, Sarah, you're familiar with this because of what you do, but a lot of people don't really think about gut health when we're thinking of mental health because we're just trained to think of the brain and the gut as two separate things. But actually, the bacteria in our gut does so much more than just absorbing food. We need it to make the neurotransmitters that tell our brain what to do. I think it's like 80 to 95% of serotonin is actually made in the gut, which serotonin is like our really important happy mood stabilizing neurotransmitter. It's not the only one that does that, but that's the one that we think of. And we need serotonin to sleep and to function and be happy and all those different things. So just knowing that 95% of that is made in the gut, well, we should probably be looking at gut health when we're talking about mental health, obviously, because there's going to be a component there. So definitely looking at the gut, and that is all about nutrition and also stress management. So it's kind of like chicken or the egg, like which one comes first, because they both impact the other. But definitely focusing on gut health, and if you're having GI symptoms and some mental health symptoms, it's really a good idea to put those things together and kind of try to figure out why those are happening and start with the gut first, because that's always the best place to start. In my functional medicine training, that's literally what we say all the time. Start in the gut. If you don't know where else to start in the gut, because things will get better from there. So yeah, definitely gut health is a huge part of mental health as well.
Yeah. And like, so many of the questions that I have in my intakes is like, I ask them like, okay, what are some of your symptoms that you're having? And I do ask a lot of physical symptoms because we don't think a lot of the times when we go in for maybe mental health therapy or anything like that, that our physical symptoms are also kind of related to our mental health symptoms.
Right.
So I think we're used to saying like, well, I'm anxious or have a hard time focusing or concentrating, which we all think is in our, in up here in the upper
Right.
area, but we're not coming. And the majority of what I find is a lot of my clients are constipated or have some GI issues.
Yeah, that's awesome that you asked that.
Stomach acid issues and things like that. So
Uh-huh.
it is it's really important to kind of address the whole body. And that's kind of why we're here today, is to kind of continue to figure out how we can do that. What are some of your thoughts about stress, and how can stress impact our gut? How can stress impact our total system, our nerves, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so aside from maybe like sugar and inflammation, stress is going to be like the biggie when it comes to getting healthy. I know you said that's a big part of your practice. In the office that I'm interning in, like we are talking about stress with literally every single patient. Just because stress can actually increase stress can actually decrease the production of HCl in the stomach, which is our stomach acid that breaks down our food. So that's like our very first defense of our digestional system. And when we're stressed, we actually impair that system. So we're not digesting our food. You can get all kinds of heartburn. You can get increased bacteria where it's not supposed to be. You can get more viruses and parasites because our stomach acid is supposed to be killing those things. And if we're stressed and we don't have that stomach acid, that's going to impair everything else down the line. So that's a big one. Also, so absorption. I also think of like blood sugar. That can really impact our mood because a lot of women, I think, I looked at the group, I think it's all women in here. Sorry if there's guys in here. But this applies to guys too. But women, we struggle with reactive hypoglycemia, which is basically like blood sugar swings. We're just so sensitive to, we get up in the morning, we get going with our day. We're responsible for all these different things. We don't eat, and then we have a crash. And so we eat like a bagel or a Pop-Tart or whatever, something that's going to shoot our blood sugar up. And then we have some energy to get through a couple more hours, and then we tank again. And then we have some energy, and then we tank again. And then that turns into these huge cortisol swings, which is, directly tied to our mood. And then cortisol takes precedence over basically every other hormone function in the body. So then our body's focused on how are we going to get through this stressful time, and we're going to ignore digestion. We're going to ignore making hormones. We're going to ignore making serotonin, all these different things, because we're focused on how stressed out we're making our body from all these different swings. So, blood sugar is huge too.
Oh my goodness. I'm vigorously taking notes. I'm like, okay, so
sorry if I'm talking too fast.
No, it's perfect.
I
love it. I feel like we could probably talk for a whole hour, and we said it was only going to be 15 minutes. So we're going to try to stick to that. But man, this is some really good information that I feel like it is really important for individuals that are trying to address some mental health issues to know.
Right.
But
definitely.
The first thing that kind of like is blowing my mind a little bit is we kind of think of, and I think a lot of the times people are being treated because they feel like they have too much stomach acid in their stomach. So they're taking like antacids or something along those lines. So how can that affect what is going on, like after you just said about, HCl and all that kind of jazz?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good point because actually decreased stomach acid is way more common than excess stomach acid. So we have all these antacids or PPIs, which are proton pump inhibitors. So they literally inhibit those cells in the stomach from making acid. So people you're only supposed to be on them for like 4 to 6 weeks, and people are on them for like years. So you can imagine why we have so many gut issues and other chronic diseases. But really, people don't realize that it's a lack of stomach acid that actually causes food to kind of sit in the stomach. It doesn't move through the GI tract as quickly as it should. So it kind of sits there. And then we have these like fermented metabolites that are actually what comes up and causes that burning. So I definitely struggled with this in chiropractic school. I was like, it wasn't necessarily like the stomach acidy feeling in my throat, but it was more like you just feel like your food's just sitting there. And I was like chronically stressed, all the things that come along with graduate school. And I started supplementing with stomach acid, HCl, which is a super cheap, easy supplement to get. A lot of people take it just like with meals or right before eating something with a lot of protein or carbs. It's going to be hard to kind of break down, just to kind of aid in digestion, because we don't realize that a lot of us don't have enough. And like I said, it's for all those other things like our first line of defense against viruses and ugly bacteria in our body. So it's actually a bigger problem to have not enough than too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember calling you one day because I was having issues and you were like, take some of this. And oh my goodness, it worked. Out of like anything that I've done, that has worked. And the crazy thing is that like, I feel like I'm making the connection is, so stress impacts the acid in our stomach, which can cause discomfort, obviously.
Right.
Then can cause more stress.
Right.
So there is like a cycle effect to all of this as well.
Right.
So trying to figure out how can we address all of this together rather than like all the individual symptoms, all the individual parts. So it's how can we do this all together, I suppose.
Yeah.
Which is really, really interesting. Another thing that you said is that cortisol takes over all of our other hormones, which is kind of scary too, to think about that, because we have so many other hormones. I know that our lesson today, our unit today, was all about sleep and talking about melatonin hormones and all that jazz too. So, like if we have more cortisol or if we have higher stress, it's going to impact every area of our life,
literally,
because of that hormone that is taking over our body. So I guess what can we do if we're experiencing maybe some lack of stomach acid or something like that? HCl is a great place to start, but what else can we do to better our physical health to impact like our mental and emotional health?
Yeah, sure. So I think, again, like you were saying, it's like a cycle. So I kind of think of it as like chicken or the egg. We don't really know which one comes first, but I think a great place to start is always going to be digestion. If you eat and you feel like something like your food is just sitting there and it should be moving through, always moving through. And if you kind of feel like you get full easily and you feel like your food's just kind of sitting there, you're not pooping, like you should be pooping like 2 or 3 times a day. And some people think it's normal to poop once a week, and it's really not. But just making sure all of that is moving like it should. So like I said, you can supplement with HCl. I definitely say under the direction of a healthcare provider, but it's an over-the-counter supplement. Anyone can get it. And there's actually, I would Google like HCl test, so you can kind of see how much you need. It just kind of walks you through building up to what you need and then kind of walking it down, just to prevent from having too much. So anyway, that would be kind of focusing on absorption, because like I said, stress kind of takes over every other function of our body, because we have our parasympathetic and then our sympathetic portions of the nervous system. So if we're in this sympathetic drive, which we have for high stress situations, like, hey, we're getting attacked by a bear, we need to like take off, and that's all we need to focus on. But a lot of us live in that nervous system like all the time. So our body is always constantly figuring out like, how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this? Instead of focusing on digesting food and making the hormones that we need, because those things are all secondary. They come back to bite us in the butt later. But all like stress just takes priority over everything else. So I would definitely say starting with good digestion and then focusing on how can I get back out of that sympathetic mode, and just remembering that, your body needs to rest. You need to bring back that parasympathetic state so that you can do all those other recovery things for the body.
Okay. And I use that analogy with the bear all the time, like with clients. So I'm like, okay, we got to figure out how to get out of the survival mode and into the thriving mode, right? So like, and Absolutely. That's kind of like what we're talking about here is like, okay, let's figure out how can we assist our body while we're in the survival mode, how to comfort it, and then kind of go from there. What foods do you recommend that might help with digestion as well? I mean, and that's another thing too. We kind of talked about, we're going to talk a lot about poop, but it's important. But like constipation is an issue that people might have, but also the opposite is too much, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that could be uncomfortable as well. So I guess
Yeah.
what foods, maybe even like just a couple other supplements could you
Yeah.
recommend that might be helpful for that digestion, which is important to manage stress?
Yeah. So a big part of impaired digestion is going to be inflammation in the gut. And I know inflammation is kind of a term that we throw around all the time in the holistic world, but it really is a big part of what's going on. So, really, anything that we can do to reduce inflammation and to really like, we call it like coating the gut with healthy things are going to help it heal. Bone broth is awesome for the gut because of the collagen properties and the good proteins that are in bone broth. Also, just like anti-inflammatory herbs, I like adding those to anything that you can, like turmeric, ginger, cinnamon. Really, all herbs and spices are amazing because they all have their own different phytonutrients that help with so many different things. But number one, they help us to fight off inflammation. So I think adding spices into foods, just a really simple way to kind of add in more nutrients. Cooking with good quality fats and not like the omega-6 heavy fats like canola oil and vegetable oil. Try to have a good quality like coconut oil or avocado oil, olive oil. Those are going to be better bang for your buck, so to speak, in those healthy fats that are anti-inflammatory versus these other fats that we don't need as many of. And if we have too many, then it becomes inflammatory again. So just like little changes like that are really helpful for inflammation. I would also say, kind of back to the blood sugar swing conversation, just making sure that we're not loading up on simple carbs that are going to just be absorbed super quickly in the gut and then give us that spike and then not really sustain us. So try to always have like a fat and a protein and a carb together, or at least a fat and protein with your carb, because that's really going to help slow that absorption so that you can use it slower and kind of be sustained longer. And then fiber is always super important for the gut. Gets things moving, it feeds good bacteria. So
Yeah. And fiber, like some people, I was just talking to someone the other day, they were like, oh, well, I eat oatmeal and I get my fiber. But what are some actually better areas to get fiber in?
Sure. Well, leafy greens, those always do the trick for me. Kale, arugula, spinach, all of those are awesome. Leafy greens are super powerful. If you just eat, like we just eat like a couple handfuls because we're too lazy to make a salad sometimes. So literally just a couple handfuls at every meal. It's awesome. But also chia seeds are good in fiber, and also some more omega-3 fats. Avocados have a lot of fiber, flax seeds, broccoli, a lot of veggies, but yeah, avocados have a lot of fiber.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, I mean, that is an important thing that we should be able to get our nutrients and our vitamins and our minerals and our fiber from food sources that grow, right? That like are growing and things like that. So
definitely.
But yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So
and we have to be able to absorb them. So that's again coming back to the stomach acid.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. Well, that's awesome. What about, like, we have only about like 9 minutes left. So what are some just the basic lifestyle changes that you would recommend? So we talked about food, we talked about nutrition, we talked about a couple supplements, but what would be any like lifestyle changes that you would make right now?
Well, definitely getting on a consistent sleep cycle. I'm sure this is a conversation that you already have with your clients, and I think you said you already talked about it in the group here. But definitely consistent sleep and kind of training your brain, like this is the time that we rest and recover, and this is the time that we wake up, and not having so much room for confusion in there, because our body's amazing in the way that it kind of works like a clock and it understands our night and day, but a lot of us interrupt that process. So just making sure that you're on a consistent sleep schedule, because again, that comes into melatonin, which serotonin is a precursor for melatonin. So if you don't have those, then that could definitely affect stress in your day, obviously. Another thing I would say is like meditation and deep breathing. Those are like surefire ways to get into our parasympathetic state. I'm actually working on a course that we're going to use with our patients at the clinic I'm at now, kind of just basically teaching people how to breathe and use the diaphragm, because when we use our belly to breathe, then we're expanding and then stimulating that vagus nerve, which is a big nerve in the parasympathetic nervous system. So definitely just like deep breathing, using your belly, kind of placing one hand on your chest and one on your stomach and seeing if you're actually breathing with your belly or if your chest is just going up and down. So kind of retraining yourself on how to breathe correctly. Definitely, like I said, meditation, which I think you talk a lot about meditation because it's super important for stress management as well. So those are just simple things you can do before bed or in the morning.
Cycles, meditation. We actually did like meditation and relaxation a little bit yesterday. So that's perfect that you mentioned that.
Awesome. Yeah.
Obviously, like any stress reducing activities participate in, but also maybe like recognizing stressors and eliminating them, so to speak.
Definitely.
That
Being
might
mindful and present.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Well, that's awesome, Chelsea. And there's so many other things that I want to talk about. And we'll have to maybe have you back again.
Yeah, definitely.
But thanks so much for joining. This has been really cool. I'm actually thinking like I might share this on my business page. I might share it on my personal page. I might keep sharing it and hand it out to all my clients, because I think this is very valuable information to first start with. I mean, I think we didn't even get deep into things. We just scratched the surface a little bit. But I hope it sparks a lot of thought for people on how important our physical health is for our mental and our emotional health. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll also add getting adjusted is great for stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. There's specific spinal segments that directly impact the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. So getting adjusted is a really good way to
I go
that too.
frequently, and I love it. It's like my personal time. But so where can people find you? And we'll definitely link it in with this video when we post it. But where can people find you at if they want more information?
So I'm mostly on Instagram. That's what I use the most, at Dr. Chelsea Karwath. And then just recently, I have a website that's about a week old now. So there's not a ton on there, but you can find me there. I'm planning to try to do some consistent blog posts. I just wrote one about my favorite immune system supplements, so you can check that out. And that's just drchelseakarwath.com.
That's awesome. And I love that immune post that you did. That was super helpful.
Oh, good. Awesome. I'm glad.
Flu season and everything that's going on in the world right now. So it's super helpful to know. But
definitely.
So thanks for coming. And we will definitely be linking some of the things that Chelsea talked about with this video in the group, so everyone can review it. And if you guys have anything else or have any other comments, you know where to find Chelsea, you know where to find myself. And for all those that came, thanks for joining and have a good night.
Yeah, have a good night. Thanks for having me.
Yep.